Well, yeah, I like that he was supporting the tanks with infantry. My problem definitely has to be the same as yours, in that he wasted too many tanks on I don't know what, or you know, he or she wasted too many tanks and didn't really preserve the tanks enough. I mean, sure, yeah, you can replace them, but still, it's better off to having units on the field and providing presence, and having that stockpile in reserve for when you need it. You know, having as many units on the field as possible to like maintain that map presence on the field is, you know, I would say pretty important to maintaining control. And there's just so many instances, like you were saying, where we just saw tanks getting thrown away for no real cause other than either laziness or just kind of, you know, a silly attack which wouldn't really go anywhere. Like that, like the locking down versus a Sherman. Come on, you are not going to win that fight. It's just no way.
Particularly when you have a light AT half-track around that could have tread busted and let you get that Panzer IV away. Not only that, not only the careless tank use, but there was also, I think, one of the things I noticed is that the Axis player didn't do a lot of repairing, despite having gotten the advanced repair upgrade for his blob. There were a couple of times where the Axis player did do some blob repairing on the JagdPanther, but not really keeping too much of an eye on the Panzer IVs. He was kind of using his Kettenkrad for that, and even with advanced repairs, the Kettenkrad by itself doesn't really do a lot. However, what Zena did have was the Panzer Support Command, and the very, very useful unit in the Bergträger. He could have brought one of those out. There are two Panzer IVs on the field that I see, not to mention one light AT half-track, and the JagdPanther itself, which could have been salvaged by a JagdPanther. Or maybe those tank losses might not have happened if salvaged by a Bergträger. Those tank losses might not have happened if the Bergträger were out there repairing things.
Well, I'm starting to think that the German player was mostly using the tanks as support. So the German players seem to be more focused on keeping the infantry blobs alive as long as possible, because he or she certainly had a lot of veteran infantry units, you know, well, he or she had them, but you know, even though they eventually got destroyed, but seemed very focused on the infantry rather than the tanks to me. It sounded like the tanks were merely used as supplements, even though that the tanks are a big investment. That's why it's like losing the tanks is such a big loss. Even though if you're just using them as supplements, you gotta at least try to keep those things alive.
Very true. Maybe we should call the Axis player it, because we are having a bit of a problem with tenses here. I also would have liked to see a little bit more of a varied force. The Axis player were relying very, very heavily on the JagdPanther for their anti-tank capability. They did have one anti-tank infantry section, or Panzer Elite. What the hell do they call the squad?
Tank Busters?
The Tank Buster Squad? Yeah, the Tank Buster Squad. It did have one of those. Yeah, don't say that too fast. Did have one of those out on the field, so some minor anti-tank, but we brought out a light AT half-track earlier, and I think it was a mistake not to bring out another one. It definitely would have helped against the crocodile rush and that sort of thing. The biggest problem was the crocodiles would get around the JagdPanther, and they would go in the base and they would start flaming it up, and the JagdPanther would have to turn and try to run and get back there and get it out of the base, because the infantry couldn't take it on. As you saw, those Tank Buster squads were just getting annihilated. However, if there had been a light AT half-track somewhere around, could have just tread busted the crocodiles and taken care of them at your leisure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess it goes to show you what happens when you hope that a blob can win the day. I think Zena was probably going for maybe an earlier victory, maybe hoping to, you know, beat Morello down in mid-game, but instead it got dragged on longer than the German commander would have liked.
Well, that's true. In fact, there were several opportunities where Zena could have gone almost completely into Morello's base unopposed because the units had just been smashed. But the Axis player never really took the opportunity to go for a very serious base poke. Even something to like taking the JagdPanther to the Allied base and knocking down the hedgerow that acts as the major protection for the Allied base would have given him the opportunity, or he, she, or it, the opportunity to waltz into the Allied base at their leisure and toss incendiary grenades and that sort of stuff.
I think, you know, I think that's all we can glean from this. I mean, Morello definitely...
Pretty much.
Yeah, Morello did, you know, a decent job holding his own, though he probably could have done a little bit better. His choice of doctrine really is kind of questionable, since he didn't really utilize a lot of airborne troops on the ground. He only had one recoilless rifle squad the entire time.
That's true, but he did paradrop. He paradropped one AT gun onto the field. However, since he already had the motor pool, it would have been cheaper, and well, it would have just been cheaper to build them if he'd been able to keep them up and keep them safe. It's nice because you can drop AT guns all around the axis if you need to, but against an infantry blob like that, the AT guns were just getting slaughtered. Incendiary grenades, the blobs would just wash over them. The Panzer IVs were circle strafing them and that sort of thing. I think the armor wasn't a bad choice for Morello, but I think his build order for armor was probably a little bit off. He went for the he went for a Sherman first, which, you know, is a great all-around tank, but he had AT out on the field. He had 2 AT guns, he had a paratrooper squad with recoilless rifles. He probably should have gone for a Crocodile first, gone out, burned a few things. Definitely would have filled a hole that needed to be filling. Later on, a couple of M10s for anti-tank against the Panzer IVs would have probably been the best bet, or he could have gone with Shermans later, but he definitely needed the upgun to make them effective, particularly when the JagdPanther was out on the field. Shermans, yeah, well, they have enough fun penetrating Axis heavy armor as it is. If you don't get them that 76mm upgrade, they're, well, it's pretty useless.
Indeed. Well, I think we rambled on long enough. Good games to D1COzena and StGMorello. Well played. And this is HellFox and Jack Cole signing out.
Good night, everyone.